Hey everybody, JR from JR's Cars, and today we're going to be doing another car review on this 2022 Chevy Malibu. So stick around and I'll give you a tour. So the 2022 Chevy Malibu is a mid-size car. Although some of the rental agencies that are out there would classify these as full-size cars, it technically is more of a mid-size car. So if you look at this one here, you can definitely tell the design cues of pretty much any Chevrolet that's out there now. You can kind of see in the nose here that it looks very similar to the Camaro, Traverse, very similar styling cues. But again, taking a look at the car here, you can definitely see it's late model Chevrolet. The nose is pretty sporty looking. It definitely sits very low to the ground. If you look how low that is, it is pretty low. And for somebody who's tall, somebody who has knee problems, back problems, leg problems, something like that, it could be a little bit difficult getting into the car. But if you take a look around here, you can see that the blue color really pops. When this is clean, it really pops. You can see the different, when the sun hits it, you see right on the bumper over here, it looks like a lighter blue, and then it fades out in kind of like a darker blue down the car. But it's got a very aggressively steeped windshield in the front and a very aggressively sloped windshield in the back. Now that, as I was driving it around, I think it was causing some issues with the rearview mirror, the way things kind of looked a little bit distorted. It's a little weird, but I guess you kind of get used to it as you drive it. You know, kind of like any car, you'll get used to it as you drive it. As I drove this about, I'd say about 350 miles. And when I first started driving it, it was a little weird to me because I'm used to driving bigger cars, minivan. However, the more and more I drove it, it got a little bit easier to get in and out of the car, but it also made me like the car a little bit more too. Then coming around to the back side of the car, like I said, it has that really big sloped back window, but you can see in the back here, looks pretty good. You have your single exhaust again. It is pretty low to the ground here. So as you're driving it, there's potential for it to be a little bumpy because it is that low to the ground. So it's got a pretty stiff suspension to it. So on some side roads that are a little bit bumpy, things like that, it could be a little jittery inside of it as you're driving. But you have a backup camera right there. And again, passenger side obviously is just like the driver's side. But it is a pretty neat looking car. The back is pretty interesting. Again, it kind of comes back to that sloped window, but the more I look at it, the more it looks almost hatchback-ish, if you want to call it that. So it's a pretty neat look. And on the trunk lid here, again, you can see the camera there, but you also have this button over here that you can push to open up the trunk lid from outside of the car too. And if we're looking inside here, right, it's got a pretty decent sized trunk. It does go in pretty far. Let's see if I can shade that for you. It is a pretty sizable trunk. It's deep, it's pretty wide. But one thing that I would definitely say is because, again, of that slope of the back window and how far it goes down, the size of the opening for the trunk lid here is not as big as it really could be. So you may have some problems getting larger things into the back here, so you might have to jimmy it in there. But again, the trunk itself is pretty deep. And unlike some other cars, you actually do get a spare tire. Now, it's only a donut, but you do actually get a spare and not some stupid little bottle of slime that they hope is going to plug a hole in a tire. One thing I definitely like about this, and it's just like my Ford Edge, is this big panoramic sunroof. I love these things when you're sitting inside and you have these things open. It's like big open air. It's almost like having a convertible without having a convertible. So this is a big option that I absolutely love in any car that I can find it in. There's that big panoramic sunroof from the inside. Looks really good. And there's two different engines and transmissions that these cars use too, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. So the Malibu comes in 4 different trim levels. The first one is the base model, which is the 1LS, and that starts off at about $23,500. The next line up is the RS, and then there's the LT, which is this model here. And then there's the Premier, and that starts off at about $33,500. Obviously, it depends on what you have optioned into the car. That price can go up from there, and depends on the dealership too. You know, they always like to tag on their extras to it too, especially with the way things have been going with purchasing new cars. Something that's an MSRP of, say, you know, $33,500 could be sitting on a lot for $34,000, $35,000, $36,000 and go upwards from there. All right, so we're going to start looking at the interior here, and in this model, it has black cloth seats, right? So personally, I like cloth versus leather, because if I had a black leather interior, especially if it was in a warm climate, there would be no way I would want to have to deal with that, just the burning. And yeah, we're just going to leave that where it is. But here's your door panel, right? Door panel's got nice pattern fabric here. Let's see if we can get you to see that. That's a pattern fabric. And then it's typical plastics, just like everything else. You have your main controls, your power mirrors, your window lockout, your windows here. This cubby right here is actually pretty good because it fits a large canister. Like if you have a bottle of water, or if you have some coffee, something like that, you can fit that there, and some storage here. And looking at the back door panels, it's pretty much the same thing. You have the same fabric and plastic. It is a small window. It is pretty small. It's probably about, I don't know, maybe 8-9 inches tall on the back here. So it is a fairly small window. Again, your storage here. And your seats all have the same fabric. Now, one thing about this is this back seat. I'm a tall guy, so I have the seat pretty much back as far as I'd be comfortable with it. I tried not to go all the way back, but you could see that there's really not much in the way of leg room if you're a tall person and you're moving the seat back. So you just have to think of that when you're purchasing one of these cars. If you're going to be having people in the back seat, or if you may have a car seat or a backwards facing car seat, that's going to be an issue for you if you're a tall person. So onto the interior here, and everything seems to be in a pretty good reachable area. You have your headlight controls over here. One thing I find pretty interesting is that the dimmer switch for the lights on the dashboard are right here. But it's not just a dial that you can turn. You have to actually push it in so it'll come out, and then you can turn it to adjust the brightness that you want the dashboard to be. So if we look at the cluster, it's just a standard cluster. You have your tach, your speedometer, your gas gauge, your coolant temperature, but then you have all the different options that are in here that are controlled by the steering wheel, by the different menu options over here. You do have Bluetooth, and you have your cruise control over here. If we look at some of the options that are here on the dashboard, we can scroll through. If you're looking the trip, you can scroll up and down on the buttons on the steering wheel, and you can get some information about the car itself, whatever the fuel range is left, different things like that, how much time that the car has been running for, and your speed. I kind of like leaving it on the speed, so that way you get your miles per hour over here, but you also get it there in the center. So we go over to the vehicle. This will give you more information about the vehicle, right? So the oil life, your air filter life, that can all be reset with maintenance. And this is something I like, is having the digital PSI readout for the oil pressure. So as I hit the gas, you can kind of see that the oil pressure will go up as it normally should. That's a good thing to keep an eye on as you're driving. And if we go down, you'll see your tire pressure. It actually gives you how many pounds of air are in each one of the tires. It'll tell you if anything is low. And your battery voltage and your coolant temperature, which is nice to see also. And if we go to eco mode, all right, so this will give you your economy status as you're driving. That's nice to see. But the one thing, and I did actually want to see this, is the first time I'm seeing this. But like I said, I did a trip. It was probably about 350 miles, and I averaged 26.9 miles to the gallon. I did reset this before, so it does pretty well with the miles per gallon. So if you're looking at that, if you're looking for a car that needs to be better on gas, this is definitely one that would be for you too. Then if you look up here, you'll see you have your map lights. Each one is there. You have your sunroof open and shut. You have your visor that goes over the sunroof that'll block off the light that's there here. You can shut off the interior lights with the door over here, and then you could turn all the lights on with this button here. This is your OnStar system, right? So you can set this up and have that squared away for you as well. One thing I also like about this too is that these visors here, right, they come down, they have your typical vanity mirror, but if you pull them out, they also slide. So that way, when you move them over here, you can actually slide it back here. So again, if you're a tall person and you're driving with the seat farther back, you can actually put this thing where it needs to be instead of having it here and having this whole area here that's not covered. Which brings us to the infotainment center. So if you look at this here, right, you have all your information settings here. You can go to home. It'll give you everything that you need. You could run your OnStar from here. Your audio, you set up your phone. There's Wi-Fi settings. It does have Apple CarPlay. It does have Android Auto. You can work your climate control from here too, right? And then there's buttons down here they're like little quick buttons for you to scroll through too. And scroll to the next screen, and you can go right back to your audio settings where I was looking at before, right? So we can go here too and go back to the audio settings. So if you don't like touching the buttons on the screen itself, it does have a home, a back and forward, and then these back buttons here, your volume control and your powers here. And then you have your climate control that's down here. You can set it to sync. And then here is where you would end up controlling all of your climate control settings as well. Again, you can sync from here, or you can sync from within the infotainment center itself. Now, one thing I just realized today as I'm driving around, and it's about 25 degrees, is this actually has heated seats. Now, typically, heated seats would come with a leather seat, but these are cloth, and a lot of manufacturers are starting to do it with cloth, which is great because I can't stand leather seats. And this one actually has 3 different levels of heat settings for driver and for the passenger. So that to me is a win. I like that function. It is a push to start too. It is a push to start. And then you have over here, if you look underneath, you have your USB-C, your regular USB, and an auxiliary import, and then you also have a power port down here. Little cubby, cup holders is your shifter, your parking brake, and then you can turn your traction control off using this button here. And it has a 6-speaker stereo system, so the sound is pretty good inside here too. Now, speaking of features that I love, that right there is the button of glory, because what it is, it's to shut off that stupid auto start stop that all these manufacturers have been putting in cars. So if you hit this button over here, watch that. Adios. Now, when you have this off, if you come up to a stoplight, the car's not going to automatically turn itself off. They're putting this auto start stop in their cars to save gasoline, but really, what does it save? It doesn't save very much, and all it does is just aggravate you, because if you get into a moment where you need to hit the gas and get the hell out of there, you got to wait for the car to start, then you can actually start moving again, which could be the difference between getting into an accident or staying out of an accident. So don't mind the dirt here. This is not my car. I had to rent this because my Honda Odyssey had an issue. It didn't want to start, and I needed a car, so it is what it is. But, you know, if you haven't checked out that Honda Odyssey video, I'll link it up here, and you'll see it down in the description down below too. You can check that out as well. But this one specifically has the 1.5 liter turbo. It's 160 horsepower, about 180 foot-pounds of torque, and it's mated up to a 7-speed CVT transmission. Now, if you got the Premier model, that would come with the 2-liter turbo, and that one actually has 250 horsepower with 260 foot-pounds of torque, and that comes with a 9-speed CVT transmission. So I'm personally not a fan of the CVT transmissions, only because I'm old school. I like feeling the shifts happen, things like that. I know it's kind of the way that all manufacturers have been going lately, but there has been known failures of CVT transmissions, so I kind of am a little bit leery. It's kind of like going to an EV. I'm leery about that. I like my gasoline engines. So this one moves pretty well. You get on it, it definitely moves. And if you had the 2-liter turbo in this thing, I would imagine this would be actually a pretty fun car to drive and pretty sporty. But it's just your standard 1.5-liter Ecotech. Not really much to see down here. But again, it's a pretty decent engine. It's got plenty of power. It's not overpowered. It's not underpowered, I don't believe. It gets out of its own way and gets you where you need to go. And with that being said, let's go get her on the road. So here we are driving the Malibu, and I kind of like it. It's not bad. It's comfortable. It feels like everything is pretty much like where you want it to be. You're not really reaching for anything too far for anything specific. Everything that you have is within an arm's reach. It's comfortable with the armrest and the shifter handle. Brakes are good. The electronic brake could be a little touchy sometimes. One of the drawbacks that I can see with the car is the seats are kind of hard. I've been driving this for probably about 250 miles now. I went on a little bit of a trip here, and obviously I'm not expecting it to be something like my minivan where I have nice plush seats. The seats are nice for getting around town, things like that, but on longer trips you're going to find yourself kind of moving around in the seat a little bit. But there's good visibility outside of the car too. So one thing that I find that's kind of odd too is looking in the rearview mirror. I guess it's because of the way that the angle of the rear windshield is, but it makes the cars look like they're not normal looking. They're almost like if they're stretched vertically. It's kind of odd looking when you're looking behind you, but I mean, grand scheme of things, that's a small thing. Audio system's pretty neat. When you're driving, it can be a little cumbersome as you have to navigate through some of the things that are in the radio, like if you're switching around, if you're switching stations. I kind of find myself looking down versus looking at the road here, so it's a little cumbersome. It definitely has good pickup. The interior noise is really not bad. It's a pretty quiet cabin, but like all of these 4-cylinder direct injected engines, when you start getting on them, they get loud. It's the sign of the times. That's what everybody's going to now. But it is pretty torquey, so if you get on it, it's gonna move. It'll get you in and out of traffic without a problem, and it's pretty nimble. It definitely takes curves well. It handles pretty good. It stays planted, so you don't feel like you're getting that body roll. All in all, I think it's a pretty good car. I'm a bigger person. I'm tall, so it definitely, you could put the seat far back, but if you put the seat far back enough, the person behind you is not going to be comfortable. So it's something to think about if you're a tall person. And then just getting in and out of the car is a little cumbersome if you have problems with your knees or your back or anything like that, or if you're tall, you're kind of squeezing into a small spot here. But all in all, I think it's a pretty decent car. And that's my review of the 2022 Chevy Malibu. Overall, it is a decent car. It gets good gas mileage. It has decent power. and it's pretty decently sized inside for somebody who's not 6'4". So if you're looking for something like that, I would definitely recommend it. And the price point really is not that bad either, knowing the car market the way things are right now too. So if you like this review and want to see more of this, do me a favor, smash that like button, drop your comments down below. Tell me, have you driven one of these before? And if you have, what was your opinion of it? I hope everybody's staying safe, and I'll catch you in the next video.